Hello friends, my name is Anubhav More and today's date is the 5th October, and today I am talking about the JPA 1 to many mapping, many to many mapping, many to one mapping. So first of all, one to many mapping. So the one to many mapping comes into the category of collection, the valued association, where an entity is associated with the collection of other entities. Hence, in this type of association, in the instance of an equity entity can be mapped with any number of the class instance of another entity. So one to many mapping example. In this example, we will create a one to many relationship between the student and library in a such way that one student can be issued more than one type of book. This example contains following steps: create a entity class student.java under com.java.mapping package that contains student id, a student name as name with a one to many annotation that contains library class object of this list type. So student package, import java.util.list, import java x.persistence entity public. We have created a class name as a student is a entity class, and then provide the id int id string as name, get the id. So generate value of strategy equal to generation type dot auto. So one to many mapping, target entity equals to library dot class. So private list books issued, the public list get books issued, return books issued, then public void set books issued, list books issued. This dot book issued equals to books issued, public int gets id, returns as id, public void set id. This dot id s dot s slash id, public string get as name, return as name, and public gets name string as name. So this dot name s name. So the create another entity class library java in under com.java.mapping package that contains book id book name. So package sorry, import java x dot persistent. We have created a class name as a library. The and provide the annotation is entity, then get the id and generated value strategy equal to generated type of auto, private the int bid and bname string bname. So public library int bid, we have call the constructor parameterized constructor. So id is equal to id, this dot is name is equal to name. So the public library is super. Another then we have create the default constructor, then we have created the setter getter method, and then now map the entity class and other database. Other databases are a configuration in persistence xml.file. So persistent.xml. So class com.java mapping.system class, and com.java so dot mapping library, and then properties name of java x persistence jbc.driver value is equal to com.driver. So property name java x persistence, then jdc.user, and the value is equals to root. The property name java x persistent dot jdbc dot password. So value is equals to null. Then the create a persistence class one to many example under com.java.one-to-one package to persistent the entity object in the with the data. So one to many example. So import java.util.array list. So import java x dot persistence, import com.java so dot mapping submitting import com java mapping library. So public class one to many example, public static void main. So entity you created a main method, then the main method entity manager factor emf is equal to persistence dot create entity manager factory. Entity manager em equals to em f dot create entity manager, am dot get transaction dot begin. So library ib, library lib equals to new library. So and then call the set b and set b id and set b name. So id is equal to 101 and name is equals to data structure. So library lib2 equal to new library, then call the set b id and set b name. So name id is a 102 and name is the database management system. So em dot persistence library 1 and em dot persistent library 2. So get create a array list. So array list library list equals to new array list and add the add the values in a list array. In a list array list dot add library 1 and list dot add library 2, and then create the object of student st1 equals to new student and call the sets id and sets name. So id is a 1 and name is a vpool. st1 dot get set books dot issued list, em dot persist, em dot gets transaction common in close dot emf close. So the output is, after the execution of the program, the three tables are generated under MySQL workbench. Student table, this table contains the student details. To fetch the data, run select from student query in SQL sid and sname. So one and vpool. And library table, this table contains a library book detail. To fetch data, run select from select from library to query MySQL b id is 101.102 and b name data structure and database management system. So student library table, this table is a represent the library mapping between the two tables, student and library table. To fetch the data, run select star from student library query in MySQL. So student sid is equal to 11 and books issued id is equal to 101 and 102. So next one is the menu to menu mapping. So Hibernate menu to menu mapping example using annotation is in the previous section we have performed menu to menu mapping the using XML file. So we are going to perform this task using annotation. We can map the menu to menu info relation either using list, set, map, bag, etc. So here we are going to discuss the menu to menu mapping. In such case, three tables will be created. Example of menu to menu mapping. So in this example, we will generate two many relationship between questions and answer by list created by a persistence class. So we have created a package named as a com.java tip and then import the java.util.list and import java x.persistence. We have created the class name as a question, the provide the entity and at the table name is equal to QES double inverted of QES 1123 and get the ID and generated value strategy equal to generation type dot auto. So private int ID and string name. So menu to menu mapping target entity equals to answer dot class cascade to cascade type dot all and join the table name is equal to q underscore ns 1123 and join columns name is equal to q underscore id inverse join columns is equal to at the rate join columns name answer underscore id list answer and answer public int get id. So return id, provide the getter setter method, create the getter setter method and the return it. And the another table is the import the java.persistence and create the table class name is the answer and the provide the entity and table at the table name is equal to answer 1123. So that provide the id and generated value is equal to strategy equals to generation type dot auto. Provide the two variables to provide the variables id and string name answer name and string posted by and get the created the getter setter method and return it. So the project information and configuration in POM.xml file, open POM.xml file and click source. Now add the below dependencies between dependencies organization dependency tag. So dependency group id org.hibernate/group id. So dependency is that dependency create the configuration file. So this file contains information about the database and mapping file. So thank you.